So cleansing and detox happens all day, every day, in every one of our bodies. If it didn't, the act of driving down the freeway would kill us, right? We wouldn't be able to process smog and pollution efficiently. If we, ate out at a couple restaurants, if we swam in a swimming pool, if our body wasn't efficiently detoxing and eliminating, even in the ocean, right? Our body's constantly balancing the bacteria in our soil, in our water, the chemicals that we're exposed to, whether it's fluoride or chlorhexidine or whatever we're exposed to maybe in our cleaning products or our cosmetics. So remember, our body is cleansing and detoxing 100% of the time, all day long. Also remember that it is nutrient dependent. So every time you shortchange the body with the delivery of nutrients, you are shortchanging this life-altering process. But sometimes, what we're putting in and what we're putting out or what we're capable of doing in our environment, sometimes our body starts to whisper and talk and scream at us that it needs help. And we all need help with this process, and it is okay to need help. But some of the little whispers or screams or yells that you might be experiencing, I want to just bring to the table. Weight gain is a big one. Remember, fat-soluble toxins have to go somewhere. The safest place for them to go is to fat cells or adipocytes. Their other options are glands like the thyroid, the pituitary, the brain, the breast, the ovaries, the testicles. We don't want that. So the safest thing that the body can do is create fat cells. So if you're having weight gain and we can help relieve that toxin burden, the body can metabolize those more efficiently. Dull skin or loss of collagen elastin. Collagen and elastin are one of the first nutrients that are stripped or robbed when the body can't officially do active detoxification. So if you suddenly feel like you have more puffiness under the eyes or your skin looks sully or dull, that's a really good indication that it's time to help support passive cleansing and active detoxification. Foggy brain, any hormone dysfunction, right? Remember, endotoxins are when our hormones can be, one aspect of endotoxin exposure is when our hormones aren't metabolized correctly or efficiently. So any hormone disease, meaning having symptoms going through menopause, PMS, low libido, anxiety, depression, diabetes, or a pooling of cholesterol. Remember, that is an endotoxin experience in the body where the body can't metabolize the cholesterol molecule. It's becoming pooled, so it's now what can be wildly helpful in the body is now becoming dangerous because it can cause problems. Definitely when we're starting to see liver enzymes, liver disease, kidney disease, because those are two major pathways of excretion and detoxification. That's an indication that you need to nurture your passive cleansing and your active detoxification. So what I tell a lot of my clients that come in that have a really toxic load, whether their metabolism's off and they're producing a lot of endotoxins, a lot of aberrant hormones, a lot of hormone dysregulation, pooling cholesterol, blood sugars off, or they've been exposed to a lot of exotoxins, maybe even the products they're taking or they're putting on their skin, is I say, look, it's not your fault. Your body is gaining weight to prevent being poisoned. Let's facilitate the release of these poisons so the body doesn't feel like it has to lay down fat in order to buffer the toxic exposure. We are seeing this over and over again with fatty liver disease, with cyst formation in the body, and definitely with weight gain. Both cleansing and detox are a critical part in you being well. Whether you're trying to prevent disease, to have more energy and vitality, or if you're doing a significant intervention in maybe chronic disease or just not feeling great. But there's a difference. There's a difference between cleansing and detox. And in my opinion, you should be actively participating regularly in both. Hey there, it's Haylie. Isn't this an amazing episode? You're probably feeling right now like you could use a cleanse. If you want me to walk you through the process, go to HayliePomroy.com/cleanse. That's HayliePomroy.com/cleanse. I will take you through the process of feeding your body so that it can actively detoxify. The true difference between cleansing and detoxing is cleansing is a passive process. Detoxing is an active process. Let me tell you a little bit about what I mean by that. So cleansing is something that the body naturally does through movement. So we move the bowel through our body, we move urine through our body, we move sweat through our body, we even move hormones all throughout our body. Detoxification is an active process. And by that, I mean that it engages a lot of the chemistry within the body. We need to have a provoking agent or something that actually pulls a toxin and withdraws it from a deposit in the body. We need to have a binding agent, something that actually is a cofactor or helps to carry it out so these toxins don't just circulate over and over and over again. It's also really important, and we're going to talk a lot about what are toxins and how does this happen in our body. It's also very important to think about the fact that many toxins on our body can be living organisms. So things like parasites or candida. So if you're really truly going to detox, you've got to have an agent that helps your body to kill off the bad bacteria, the candida, the parasites, and helps get rid of those pathogens and get them out of the body. If you want to get healthy, if you want to stay healthy, if you want to be vibrant and outrageously healthy, cleansing and detox is a critical part of your health and wellness program. You've got to have a provoking agent, something that actually stimulates the body to release toxins from where it's currently deposited. You've got to have a binding agent, something that joins with that toxin to safely remove it so that it doesn't just circulate again and again. A lot of times we forget that toxins can be actually living things like bad bacteria, candida, or parasites. You've got to consume and ingest and stimulate things that will actually kill off the bad pathogens in the body, help release those from the body, and then restore a healthy ecosystem or environment. So you've got to do both. You've got to cleanse and you've got to detox. The most important thing is that both of these processes are highly, highly nutrient dependent. We talk about cleansing being a passive process. But a very functional body only does a passive process well. If your body is in any state of dysfunction, passive things like having regular bowel movements can become severely disrupted. So you want to think about things like constipation, right? Slowing that passive cleansing process. Things like not hydrating well or having edema, holding on to water, slowing that passive cleansing process. Even individuals that don't sweat efficiently, that slows that passive process. When cleansing is not efficient or it's disrupted by surgery, by stress, by toxins, then you've got to use the active process of detoxification and actually help the body rid itself of things that are inhibiting health and wellness. So cleansing might sound something that, nice and lovely and natural that we do in our body. But there's a lot of burdens that happen within our environment, that happen within our lives. And we're going to talk about exotoxins and endotoxins and what happens to the body when it's under a tremendous amount of stress. So yes, cleansing is this lovely natural process. But because of the current state of our food, of our environment, of our world right now, we've got to practice active detoxification. We've got to actually help our bodies and facilitate what it was naturally designed to do. So there's that, right? Our bodies are under tremendous stress and we need to actively nurture detox and we need to actively support cleansing. But you guys, we're being exposed to tons of toxins and tons of endo and exotoxins, environmental stresses and internal stressors that our body actually doesn't have the capacity to deal with. That's why you want to make sure that in order to support your body's natural ability to cleanse, you're using active detox that has binding agents in it, provoking agents in it, herbals that'll help the body kill pathogens, and also nutrients that'll help facilitate the process of cleansing, right? The goal is to heal the body back into a state of homeostasis. Even in a perfect world, even if you're eating 100% organic, even if you're making all of the efforts to dry skin brush, get your exercise in, infrared sauna, you're doing so much to support your body's natural cleansing process, our human body just does not possess the enzymes in order to rid itself of the toxins we're currently being exposed to. So you've got to become an active detoxifier. And I'm gonna help you learn how to do that. So I commend you in taking care of yourself and eating well and working really hard to support your body in its cleansing process. But there are times, and I know many of you are dealing with things that my clients are dealing with, where you have got to jump in and actively detoxify this body. I commend you for all of the efforts that you're putting in towards your wellness, but it is okay to understand that your body needs help. We need help to actively detoxify what we're exposed to and what has got out of balance in the body. So let's talk a little bit about cleansing and detox. A lot of people use these words interchangeably. A cleanse, you hear people say cleansing for the sake of detoxing, right? We like to kind of look at them a little bit differently, although of course they work together. We kind of consider cleanse a passive process. So this should happen in the body with very little effort, right? Our body shouldn't be struggling to do this. These are things like movement of toxins, right? Hey there, it's Haylie. Active and passive detoxification is critical to a body in need. But I don't want you to feel like you're in this alone. If you go to HayliePomroy.com/cleanse, I will walk you through a 10-day detoxification process. That's HayliePomroy.com/cleanse. HayliePomroy.com/cleanse. I look forward to nourishing your body and getting you healthy. Movement of the bowel, peristalsis, what we call motility. Those little finger-like projections in the bowel that help move the stool. And also when we talk about cleansing, we talk about volume, right? So are we moving enough bowel through the body? Are we moving enough urine through the body? Are we constipated at all? Anything like that. So cleansing is the body's natural ability to kind of transport toxins through the final stages of detoxification. Detoxification is a much more complicated process. We call this an active process, okay? Where cleansing is passive, meaning it should be very easy, it should be in stage of the toxins process, it should just be moving on through the body. Passive, very passive moving. In active detoxification, there has to be something that does what they call provokes the release, right? So our body naturally, when it's exposed to a toxin, is it will store that toxin until it knows what to do with it. It goes through 3 phases of making the toxin extremely poisonous to more safe to be transported or moved throughout the body. But there's a provoking that has to happen. It's an active process. There's also something that's called a binding that has to happen. And that's those 3 phases that I just talked about, meaning that that toxin can't safely travel through the body as a poison, or it will wreak significant havoc in the body. There are also detoxification processes that are active that kill off things, okay? Let's say you maybe have candida or parasites or bad bacteria. That active act of killing off that bad thing that has come into your body or is flourishing in your body, that is active detoxification. The other thing is restoring, right? Rebuilding, restoring, reinoculation, all the R's, rebuilding, restoring, reinoculation. That is an active process that is extremely, extremely nutrient dependent. So in our bodies, we have passive cleansing, active detoxification. Both of these are nutrient dependent. When toxins come into place, the nutrient demand becomes higher and higher. So when you talk about cleansing and detoxing, there's a word that comes up over and over again, and that is toxins, right? Toxins. What in the world are toxins? We like to break these into two categories. One is what's called exotoxins. And the other is what's called endotoxins. Both of them are impact cleansing and detoxification, but you'll see how the movement of exotoxins versus the detoxification of endotoxins can be really different in the body. So exotoxins are things that come out from outside of your body, from the outside environment. Things that we talk a lot about are things like, heavy metals with all the smog and pollution from all the fires and industrial pollutants. So we're going to talk about metals, we're going to talk about chemicals, food additives, preservatives. Exotoxins are things like a lot of the cosmetics. We know that cosmetics can be very dirty. There are many known carcinogens in our cosmetics. It can also be things like maybe food that you're consuming, right? Burnt food, food dyes, coloring, preservatives, additives, all kinds of things like that. We get our exotoxins from a couple different places in our body, right? They can come in through our mouth when we ingest them. So our mouth, our skin, our nose, our lungs, right? Our skin on our feet, if we're walking through grass that's recently been, had weed killer put on it or something like that. So exotoxins mean things that are kind of coming from outside and entering in. Endotoxins are things that are created kind of within our body. So endotoxins can be very interesting, very, very interesting. Endotoxins can be something that's normally healthy, like let's say estrogen, but is metabolized in an unhealthy way or in a wrong bond angle or misses part of the metabolic process. That itself can become an endotoxin. It can be carcinogenic. It can cause tissue, scar tissue laying down. So hormones in general. Things like cholesterol can become an endotoxin. Cholesterol is metabolic gold, right? We manufacture all of our hormones. We keep our vitamin D levels stable. But if it pools too high, endotoxin can be things like lipids, fats, right? Other kinds of endotoxins can be things like our feces, our bowels, right? If we don't eliminate those efficiently, those can become very toxic. Our urine. Other things that can happen that can be endotoxic in nature are things like parasites. So it can be an exotoxin if you ingest it, but once it's living in your body and it's starting to create offspring and its own feces and its own urine, it can create a lot of endotoxins within the body. Funguses can create a lot of die-off in endotoxins. We can also have high mold levels. Another area of endotoxins is things like candida. So it's not only what we're exposed to, but it's what's going on in our body and in our environment that can determine our toxic load. So let's talk about toxins for a minute. So we put them into two categories. There's what's called endotoxins and exotoxins. So endotoxins are things that are created within the body. Kind of the most common endotoxin is our stool, our feces, right? Urea, our urine, things that we want to avoid and get rid of out of our body, is also one. Sweat can be full of endotoxins. But sometimes people forget that endotoxins can also be our hormones if they're not metabolized efficiently. For example, hormones that create insulin resistance are endotoxins, toxins that our body are producing that bind with those hormone receptor sites. Endotoxins can cause things like cyst development in the body, masses, endotoxins of unmetabolized estrogen or mismetabolized estrogens can cause breast cancers or a variety of kinds of cancers. Those are endotoxins, things that our body is creating. Another thing is endotoxins can be from something that's living in our body that has die-off. So for example, candida, individuals that have heavy candida levels, they can give off, as they die, endotoxins, poisons actually in the body. Parasites give off endotoxins in two ways. One, by their own feces and urine. They actually release that into your body's system. It can cause a lot of joint inflammation, pain, gas, bloating, a variety of things. But when they die off and that foreign body is in your body before it's secreted, it gives off a tremendous amount of toxins. It's like rotting and decaying within the body. So I want you to think about endotoxins, right? Things that are happening within the body. And then a lot of us talk about things that are exotoxins, right? Exotoxins, they're things that are outside of the body that are introduced into the body. Typically through like the lungs, breathing, on the skin, that's endotoxins can come in. Definitely by mouth, what you eat or what you drink. Metals, chemicals, additives, preservatives, burnt food, cosmetics, right? Things that have carcinogens in them. Those exotoxins come into the body, have to be processed and removed. That is really important that you think about. Metals are pretty much the only exotoxin that if you consume arsenic, you excrete arsenic, right? If you consume a chemical, the body actually has to transform it through the liver. That's one of the reasons why the liver is so important when we're talking about toxins and detoxification. The body has to transform those toxins so they're less poisonous, so they can either be deposited somewhere, which is not what we ideally want, right? Why we support active detoxification, not just passive cleansing, as well as secreting it so it modifies or it transforms it, it changes the chemistry of it, so it's less poisonous, so that it can be secreted through the breath, through sweat, through urine, or through the feces. So when we do things like fasting, for example, the benefit there is that we limit the amount of exotoxins through the mouth that can come in. The problem is it does not support the endotoxins that are being produced to be removed. As a matter of fact, remember, cleansing and detoxing are nutrient dependent. So we can feel maybe a pseudo benefit because we have less bad things coming in our mouth because we're not eating, right? Or we're not consuming things that could have a potential exotoxin in it. But we're not feeding the body's ability to secrete endotoxins, and we're not feeding the body to secrete exotoxins, which we still get from our skin, from our breath, so we're still having all that exposure. So what's really important, and it can be if you're trying to optimize your health, be outrageously healthy, if you're trying to do prevention, but especially if you're in a situation where you're doing some sort of intervention for chronic disease or illness, you've got to make sure that you are facilitating the secretion or the voiding or getting rid of endotoxins and exotoxins, right? So we want to get rid of the endotoxins, the things that our body's creating. We want to create healthy hormones. We want to have clean receptor sites for those hormones. We want to make sure that our body does not create aberrant or abnormal cells, cysts, cancer cells, things of that nature. We want to be able to void the exotoxins that we're exposed to. If you plan on eating, breathing, drinking, or sleeping at any time or for the rest of your life, you're going to have chronic exposure. If you are exhibiting any symptoms of not passively cleansing efficiently, let's talk about that. Things like fatigue. These are the low level symptoms. Definitely liver disease, cysts, masses in the body, right? Our body is depositing toxins at a faster rate than it can get rid of toxins. But if you're starting to have things like foggy brain, dull skin, if you're noticing rashing, hair quality's bad, or if you have any hormone dysfunction, right? Whether that's libido, anxiety, depression, lack of energy, lack of vitality, right? A lot of that is a sign of endotoxin toxicity. If you're having things like achy joints, starting to have chronic disease like diabetes, elevated cholesterol, that's an indication of exotoxin toxicity overload. So we've got to have the passive cleansing efficient. So you need to feed and nurture that. But you've also got to have the active detoxification efficient so that you can provoke those things to be released from where they're being stored. You can bind those things so that the body deems them as safe to get rid of. You can facilitate the release. You can facilitate the die-off or kill-off of things like candida and parasites and bad bacteria. But you also have to have active nutrients that restore and re-inoculate to help facilitate more efficient passive cleansing in the future. So one more, I guess I would say, false promise of fasting is it's kind of like, reducing your exposure. But it doesn't, we can't live in that environment forever, right? We will not only not thrive, we're a nutrient dependent being. I mean, all day, every day, for any moment of time that nutrients aren't available, we're operating at a substandard level, okay? And we don't rest, our gut does not rest. It rests 3 days post-mortem, meaning after we pass and leave this earth, the gut finally slows 3 days after. But it's this big false promise because we can maybe feel better because we're maybe ingesting less poison, we'll call it that. But the mechanisms for our body to bind and secrete or excrete poison has not been healed. As well as there is no nutrients being delivered that helps our body on its every nanosecond of every moment that you are alive. The body is creating a homeostasis with endotoxins. As we're converting our estrogens, as we're converting our testosterones to bioactive hormones, as those hormones are making the magic and binding with those receptor sites, every single nanosecond of that process is nutrient dependent. And as we down-regulate our nutrient input, our body will down-regulate the process of not only healing, but of operating functionally. So I'm gonna break this down. If you stop eating for a period of time, you're maybe not putting poison in the body, but you are also not nourishing the things that are keeping the endotoxins, the current constant poison that's being created in the body, right, at homeostasis. It is a nutrient-dependent process. So you if you say exotoxins, endotoxins, fasting might help lower the exotoxin load, but it can actually elevate the endotoxin load. What you want to do in the body is nurture passive cleansing while putting strategic nutrients in the body to facilitate active detoxification. When we talk about detox, there's a lot of organs of involvement. Kind of the powerhouse organ that everybody talks about is the liver, right? The liver is kind of what we call transformation organ. So it takes things like even the cholesterol molecule and it transforms it into all of our sex hormones. It takes poisonous chemicals and transforms them into less poisonous chemicals that our body can either deposit or try to secrete or excrete. We do talk about the lungs being an organ of detox, the skin being an organ of detox, the kidneys, right, as we secrete urine and release a lot of water-soluble toxins. The thing about the liver is darn efficient as long as it's clean. as long as it's not overwhelmed or bombarded. We see the lining or the peritoneum of the liver. I was told the other day by one of the docs, it's just so common to have liver cysts now or to have fatty liver disease because that is a toxin storage disease, both of those. So the liver does everything it can do to try to not be overloaded or bombarded by both endo and exotoxins. You know, when we test for liver disease, when we look at our chemistry in our labs and we look at liver disease, what we're looking at is liver enzymes, right? And enzymes and hormones are symbiotic, or basically the same thing in our body. And so when we look at the liver not functioning well, it starts to secrete what we call help me signals or hormones or secretions of enzymes that say, I'm really struggling here. And that's how we can, without opening the body, see if there's an indicator for liver disease. So there's very little exchange of toxins in cleansing. What I mean is, as toxins come into the body, it's very uncommon for the toxin that goes in to be the toxin that is released. We do see this sometimes with heavy metals. A lot of times you have to use a provoking or a chelation agent, something that's gonna kind of pull it out of that spot where it's being stored. But typically it's not like you drink a food additive and preservative and then you urinate out a food additive and preservative. The liver has to actually put all of the energy in to transform it so that it can go through the metabolic and cellular processes to be excreted. The liver is the most nutrient dependent organ in the entire body. The amino acids that are required, the micronutrients, the B vitamins, the chelated minerals, all of those things that are required for the liver to just function in an optimal situation are profound. I could write from ceiling to floor all of the nutrients, and in fact there's this amazing display of all of the biochemistry, the biochemical processes that happen in the liver every 60 seconds, and it's floor to ceiling in tiny font of what actually happens within the liver. But it's extremely nutrient dependent in the best case situations when you're cleansing efficiently and when you have very to no exotoxin exposure, meaning you're eating 100% organic, you've got the best air purifiers, the purest water, the cleanest cosmetics, there is no fire that is billowing smoke into your buildings. There is no industrial pollutants that we're now cleaning all of our surfaces with. All of that is really stressful and creating a lot of stress on the liver. So there are certain nutrients that the liver consumes, certain micronutrients like NAC or N-acetylcysteine, that the liver consumes when it's in a state of transformation. So when it's taking poisons and making them into a chemical compound, reducing or oxidizing this chemical compound so that the body can handle it and hopefully process it out, or it will deposit it sometimes within the tissue, the thyroid, the brain, the adipocytes, the fat cells, right? There are certain nutrients that the liver consumes very high levels of. So when you're looking at doing active detox, you want to focus on those nutrients, things that are going to feed the liver so that it can transform endo and exotoxins into things that we can get rid of and secrete. Those things are N-acetylcysteine, alpha lipoic acid. You want to alkalinize vegetables, so a lot of kale, spinach, spirulina is a powerhouse for the liver. Ways that we want to feed active detoxification are micronutrients from food-based products that can help kill off bad bacteria, candida, parasitic stress. Things that you want to look for are things like lemon bioflavonoids. That's a great one. It's a natural antihistamine, but it also makes an environment, helps to create an environment that pathogens cannot flourish in. Quercetin is an amazing, powerful partner in active detoxification. Quercetin helps reduce part of the immune imbalance where mast cells are secreted into the gut. So this causes all of that gut dysbiosis, this leaky gut syndrome, and can even participate in neuroinflammation when the body is in a toxic state. So when you're looking for active detoxification, look for things like lemon bioflavonoids, look for things like quercetin. Turmeric is another powerhouse. Check your source on turmeric. Turmeric can have a lot of exotoxins in it and endotoxins in it. So one of the things that drives me crazy right now is that there is no requirement to sell nutraceuticals with endotoxin testing. So we do endotoxin testing 3 times because I'm neurotic about this. Also, I understand that endotoxins can actually create significant disease and stress the immune system. I have an autoimmune disorder. So when you are consuming turmeric, you want to make sure that the company is doing what they call endotoxin testing. So you want any organic product, right? Super important if you're consuming any food-based organic product. We talked about toxins, endo and exo. So endo is what's created within. Well, when we're talking about an organic food product, it itself can create toxins within itself or store toxins within itself. So I talked about kale and spinach. They have very high levels of arsenic. So we've got to make sure that you're doing endotoxin testing for arsenic if you're using a plant-based protein powders. One of the highest exotoxin, if you consume it, because it has its own endotoxins of arsenic, lead, cadmium, and mercury, right? So if you're consuming a plant-based protein powder, you call and ask for their endotoxin testing. It is critical that if you're working on active detoxification, you're not introducing exotoxins while you're consuming that product. Things that are super helpful, like with the turmeric, with the spirulina, can also be extremely toxic products. It's why we triple test ours. We test it before we purchase it, we test it upon arrival, we also test it after blending to make sure that nothing happened in the process to introduce bacteria, mold, arsenic, lead, cadmium. It is amazing that that's not required, especially in any, again, if you're going to participate in active detoxification and you're adding in nutrients like N-acetylcysteine, turmeric, quercetin, again, to help that mast cell, that inflammatory reduction, you're adding turmeric in. You want to make sure that they themselves are doing endotoxin testing. So in order for the liver to be an active detoxifier efficiently, it's gonna do its best, right? And it's going to even create disease in order to try and do its best. Fatty liver disease, cysts on the liver, sclera or scarring of the liver. The body will do everything it can to work on active detoxification. The liver will do its darndest to the point of disease. We've got to have a clean liver, which means we've got to reduce exotoxin exposure. We've got to reduce endotoxin exposure, but we also have to heal the mechanisms and feed the liver. So we've got to have a well-fed liver. I would say we have to have a provoked liver. And what I mean by that is we have to have a liver that has the nutrients that it hyper-consumes in a phase of detoxification. So we've got to have a liver that's fed to be a world-class detoxifier. And then we have to help heal and nurture. So we've got to add the good bacteria in. We've got to create homeostasis with the blood sugars. We've got to help wash those hormone receptor sites so they can bind efficiently. We've got to metabolize out the testosterones and the estrogens that are aberrantly or being synthesized in a negative and detrimental way. We see this a lot with the thyroid and reverse T3, right? Our bodies, and so we have to make sure when we provoke the liver to be a champion detoxifier, iodine is critical that we add that in to an active detoxification process. When we see this with the thyroid, and as the thyroid takes the hormone that's primarily secreted by the gland, and it has four iodine molecules on it. The liver helps transform that T4 into T3 by magically removing one of those iodine molecules so it can bind to those hormone receptor sites. When the liver isn't well fed or it's not provoked to be a champion, the body will will remove an iodine molecule from the wrong angle. And then that thyroid hormone never meets the receptor site, and our body doesn't get that metabolic fire that can happen when our thyroid is functioning properly, but also our hormones are being received on the cell and the cells become active. So we have to clean the liver, we have to feed the liver, we have to provoke the liver, we have to heal and nurture the entire body of active detoxification and facilitate passive cleansing. When the liver gets overwhelmed with toxins, it starts to secrete enzymes at a higher level than what's healthy for the body. Some of those enzymes can create what we call hyper deposition or depositing of toxins. So we'll see things like cysts or lipomas or even cancer proliferation. The body will try to find a dumping ground for the toxins. We also see this with aggressive weight gain, and specifically aggressive hormone-based weight gain. The liver cannot efficiently, it's either not healed, well fed, provoked, fed, healed, nurtured. The liver can't do the job in the way that's in a state of homeostasis or healthy. It's going to do the job, but it's going to create dis-ease or disease in the body as a result of it. So we see things like growth of fat cells, deposits of fat, because these fat soluble toxins have to go somewhere or they create a poison if they stay in the blood. We also see a lot of neurologic inflammation. We see things like anxiety, depression, a sense of unease or uneasiness in the body. So the liver will do its best to create a homeostasis in a state of disease so that we don't get poisoned by the toxins that either we're being exposed to or that we're producing within our bodies. Hey guys, just a little super quick PSA here. So if you are consuming products that have a lot of whole food based nutrients in it, I'm a huge advocate for that. If you're using a vegan protein powder, I'm a huge advocate for that. These are potentially, though, the dirtiest products on the market because of their organic nature, just like your organic nature, right? They have the capacity to be filled with endotoxins themselves. When you consume them, they become exotoxins, things that you bring from the outside into the body. So make sure as you're looking at your labels, as you're doing maybe organic cleansing and detoxification, if you're using a provoking agent, make sure that they do third-party endotoxin testing. Contact your consumer. Make sure they are caging those products behind cages. They're having independent people come in and test them because it can be the most profound thing that you put in your body to facilitate active detox, but it can also be one of the most toxic things you put in your body when you're just trying to detox. So the way I like to think of the body is this whole incredible cleansing and detoxing mechanism is that the lungs detox efficiently through breath, the bowels do natural cleansing. They don't necessarily transform the toxins within the gut. They cleanse and move them on out and through. The urine cleanses and moves things on out and through. But the liver's what we call the transformation organ. So that's why with active detox, so if the body has a toxic burden, if it's starting to not work at optimal levels, if it's having pain, inflammation, foggy brain, even constipation, right? The body can slow the rate of transient if the toxins are too much for the body to handle. That's why we've got to actually feed the liver so it can do the job of transformation. One way to take a significant burden off the liver, and something I want you to think about, is by using something that actually binds. So we talk about provoking with nutrients, right? Provoking the liver to release, because we don't want the liver to focus on depositing. That's where we have disease. So if we feed the liver to release, and we can come in with nutrients and we can bind those toxins, make them less detrimental to the body, kind of be a little escort to shuttle them out through, remember, cleansing, right? If we can use those binding agents and even the good gut floras, the good healthy probiotics, and help heal those mucosal linings, we can actually make it less burden for the body to detox. When we're talking about cleansing and detoxification, there's a lot of organs of involvement, a lot of glands of involvement, but let's kind of talk about the superhero, right, organ, the liver. So when we eliminate, we talk about the kidneys, we talk about the bowels, we detox through the lungs, but the liver is really critical to the detoxification process where our body takes things that are very toxic, right? Toxins, and it converts them into things that are less toxic. Why is this important? Toxins our bodies typically store. Things that are less toxic, our body typically tries really hard to excrete. This process here in the liver is nutrient dependent. I cannot stress that enough. Now, nutrients that matter, right, is amino acids, so a very easy to digest protein source. Specifically, we look a lot in the science right now about NAC, N-acetylcysteine. NAC is used in hospitals intravenously when individuals overdose on acetaminophen, right? We give NAC intravenously so that it protects the liver. It helps facilitate secretion. It also is very protective of the kidneys. It's really good for respiratory health, for fertility, for brain health. But NAC seems to be a key ingredient in allowing the body to identify, or what we call bioactivate, a toxin, conjugate it, bind something to it to make it less toxic. So one thing when our body's bringing in toxins, right? Let's talk about an exotoxin. An exotoxin comes into the body, let's say maybe through the mouth, you eat it, you consume it, you ingest it, it's in a product that has blue dye, red dye, maybe herbicides and pesticides. Our body does not just secrete the toxin as is. Our body has to transform that toxin through this process of consumption and elimination. And that transformation happens within the liver. The liver does this all day, every second of the day. But the things that can affect the liver from being good at it, efficient at it, keeping you healthy at it. We don't want to store. This is where we get fatty liver disease. This is where we get cysts, polyps, cancers, neurotoxic, neuroinflammation, right? When our toxins are not, I like to use the word kind of watered down or conjugated, made less toxic so we can excrete it. This process here is where we get all of this disease processes. Even things like diabetes and high cholesterol can happen because our body cannot metabolize those things that suddenly become toxic when the levels become high. So the liver does well when the liver is well fed. We need a clean environment for the liver, right? So we need to eliminate things that are being put into the body that can create a toxic response. We need a clean bloodstream, right? So we need to eliminate as quickly as we conjugate, as quickly as our body's doing this, we need to make sure that it gets out. But the liver needs to be well fed. Oops, there we go. Well fed. This organ has nutrient demands that it's required to be fed in order to be functional. All of our body has to be fed, but this one has the most nutrient demands of any organ. It's also primarily responsible for this process of taking toxins and allowing our body to convert it to something that's safe to get rid of and actually get rid of it. It also has to be what we call provoked. Okay, when I say the word provoked, I mean things like enticed, encouraged, supported. It has to be infused with things that says, don't go into storage mode. Don't take this neurotoxin and store it in the neurological tissues of the brain, of the nervous system. Don't take this toxin and put it in areas of the thyroid, like a lot of heavy metal toxicity has an affinity for the thyroid. It has to be provoked to move through the chain of phase 2 of liver detoxification in order for it to have the capacity for excretion. Provoking agents are things like iodine, N-acetylcysteine, nutrients like quercetin, bioflavonoids, lemon bioflavonoids, things like spirulina. When I say those things, I'm going to kind of go over those again. We have lemon bioflavonoids are very good provokers to help the liver produce glutathione so that the body can convert these toxins into a less toxic substance. As soon as the body when it starts ranking, number 10 on the toxin scale, the body's going to go into storage. Store, create aberrant cells, store as fat, store in the nervous system, store in the glands, store in and create plaque with cholesterol. So lemon bioflavonoids is a really good, we'll call it lemon bioflavonoids. Quercetin is really good. Quercetin really helps reduce mast cell release in the immune system, that inflammatory response that causes the body to have strong reactions. The other thing that's really good is spirulina as a protein source. As a vegan-based protein, it's got an amazing amino acid complex that really, really nurtures this very important organ. Like I mentioned, N-acetylcysteine, it's critical when a body's toxic, when a body's having toxic exposure. So the process of detoxification you have to stimulate the body to not be in storage. The other thing that happens is it has to be healed, right? So if this pathway is not working efficiently, not only do we need to lower the toxic exposure coming in, reduce the pathways of endotoxins, toxins that are being secreted and released in our body, but we have to heal this mechanism of metabolism. So it takes minimally 5 days to begin to reverse these, and ideally 10 days to make an impact all the way from provoking to eliminating. I just want to reiterate that. This is not like a light switch turning on and off. It is a process. It's like it has to be, we have to make a U-turn. We have to slow down the exposure, right? We've got to get rid of toxins that are being added in. We've got to slow down the proliferation of toxins that are being produced within our own bodies, right? We've got to make a U-turn, and we've got to heal this process here so that the body, we're going to be exposed to toxins every day. If you eat, breathe, drink, sleep, you're going to be exposed to toxins every day. What's unfortunate is a lot of nutraceuticals are loaded with endotoxins. So make sure that your company that you purchase from does endotoxin testing. It isn't required, but you should not consume something that doesn't. So we've got to lower the metabolic pathways that create endotoxins within our own body. We've got to eliminate exotoxins from coming in. And then we have to go in and actually heal the mechanisms of what got the collateral damage, if you will, of what happened by having this chronic exposure. So in order for this to function properly, we have to have a clean environment. The liver has to be well fed. We have to have what we call provoking agents, right? Or nutrients that actually help facilitate the binding and the release. And then we have to have something in that promotes the healing. Otherwise, you're going to detox, but then retox. What I mean by that is you're going to start to release toxins, they're going to circulate, and they're just going to reabsorb in the body. So true healing has to happen so you don't retox. You actually detox. The other thing to make note of is because this is such a nutrient dependent process, if we eliminate exotoxins by going off of food, right? We start fasting, we eliminate food for a period of time. There is a chance that you can have a little bit less toxic exposure because you're not bringing these toxins into the body. The problem is that all of this is nutrient dependent. So every moment that your body is nutrient deprived, your ability to heal this, to speed up this mechanism, to improve this mechanism is compromised. So as you reduce the amount of endotoxins entering into the body, you might feel some relief because you're not putting more poison in. The problem happens is as you slow this mechanism and we have lower endotoxin entry, we can actually have more exotoxin, less exotoxin entry. We can actually have the proliferation of endotoxins or things that are out of balance in the body because we're not feeding the pathway for detoxification. So even though you're not maybe letting less bad in, you're not cleaning up the bad that already got in. But even worse than that, you're not providing the nutrition that is required to stop your body from producing more endotoxins. So from letting the yeast flourish or the bad bacteria flourish or from pooling cholesterol or from having blood sugar out of balance. So it's a nutrient dependent process. We must feed ourselves to detoxify ourselves. So how do you know if your cleansing and your detoxing is falling behind of your exposure, right? So let's talk about cleansing and detox and what that looks like in your body. So we can have exposure, we can have metabolic imbalances that can cause those endotoxins, we can have exposure, all those exotoxins. Things that I want you to start looking for is unexplained weight gain, right? Especially around hormone transitions like menopause, menopause. Our body starts to not metabolize those hormones efficiently. We start to go into fat storage because we cannot metabolize those hormones. And the weight gain is aggressive and the weight loss is very difficult. But also things like dull skin, a real kind of, dull skin. Kind of graying in the skin, loss of collagen, elastin, foggy brain. The body works very hard, especially when it gets bombarded with neurotoxins or the pathways for eliminating neurotoxins is not efficient, right? We start to get a lot of foggy brain. But you can also have, especially when there's endotoxin imbalances, when the neurotransmitters become pooled in the wrong way. You can have with weight gain things like cravings, with leptin and ghrelin being out of balance. You can have menopausal symptoms when estrogen is out of balance. Lack of libido, lack of physical strength when testosterone's out of balance. When they're out of balance, they become a toxin in the body. Other things, look for things like anxiety, depression. There we go. You want to look for big things like maybe liver disease or kidney disease. Remember, those are very important organs of involvement when you're detoxifying. Things to also look for is onset of chronic disease. So things like hypertension, high blood pressure, things like high cholesterol. Remember, you're starting to pool those endotoxins in the body. Diabetes, the body becomes insulin resistant. So there's symptoms or there's expressions of your body saying, hey, my ability to naturally cleanse and actively detoxify is not keeping up with the stress on my body. And this is how we see those exposures. These are just a few ways that we start to see those exposures manifest. But what really happens in detoxification, there's 3 steps that I want you to be very, very aware of. One is what's called bioactivation. And I'm wondering if you're going to be able to identify where your body is not getting enough support. The other one's called conjugation. And the third one we like to call transport or elimination. Okay, so let's say you're exposed to a toxin or your body is not metabolizing a hormone efficiently and that becomes an endotoxin. Or you have a parasite and it's, feces and excrement are creating an endotoxin. Or you have candida and the die-off is creating an endotoxin. The first thing with bioactivation is the body has to acknowledge that as a toxin and it has to send enzymes, right? And we talk about the liver a lot. Remember, the way we measure liver health in the bloodstream is by testing liver enzymes. When the liver starts to struggle, when we're creating fatty liver disease, we start to secrete enzymes that give us an indication that the body's struggling. So the body takes the toxin and it sends enzymes to the location of the toxin, whether it's been deposited into the tissue, into the fat cells, into the breast tissue, into the brain, into the thyroid, or if it's circulating in the bloodstream. and it starts to activate the metabolism of that toxin. It starts to take that toxin and say, let's move it from deposition or sticking it, storing it in the body, and let's start to slowly move it into a state of release. So things that you will know if this bioactivation is struggling is you will start to have things storing in the body, right? So a storing of fat, a storing of cysts, a storing of lipomas, moles, skin bumps, rashes. The body is in storage mode. We know that bioactivation is struggling. And so we need to have an abundance of enzymes in order to bind and identify in the body. Those enzymes come from food sources. Those enzymes come from nutrients that we can put in our program when you're cleansing and detoxing. The next step is conjugation. So conjugation happens when we take this to the next step and we take the enzymes are active, right? The toxin's been identified. So we've got enzyme plus toxin plus nutrients. So the nutrients, B vitamins, amino acids from your protein, so the enzymes, those are a lot of phytoenzymes. Those are secreted in the pancreas and the stomach and the GI tract. These nutrients, right? This is such a nutrient dependent phase. These nutrients come in and it's almost like watering down. They transform this very toxic toxin into something that is less toxic, right? So that it can be brought into the bloodstream, and the goal is to be excreted out of the body. So ways to know that you're stuck in conjugation is a lot of hormone problems, but especially hormones related to inflammation. So if you have joint pain or joint congestion, swelling in the joints, edema, swelling in the ankles, pitting in the ankles. Remember, bioactivation, you're gonna see things like mass, cysts, fatty liver disease, right? We are having a difficult time there. Conjugation, you're gonna see things like your hormones out of balance. You're gonna have a lot of symptoms associated with, hot flashes, restless sleep too. Not sleeping well. The body can't get into that nice REM sleep. The body is bringing stuff out of storage, and the body is having anxiety and stress because the poison is not getting diluted down enough to be safe to be released. So that tired and wired, that uneasiness, that lack of sense of rest, also not being able to lay down muscle, not being able to heal efficiently. That's when this phase can be off most significantly. The next one is transport and elimination. So this is a really important one because I always say you want to actually detox, not retox, okay? Detox, not retox. So let's say things are going fairly well. Your body is identifying the toxin. You have provoked it, you're nourishing the liver, you're doing a lot of N-acetylcysteine, some quercetin, some bioflavonoids, you've got some spirulina, you're doing a lot of the alkaline vegetables, the spinach, the kale, the cruciferous vegetables. It's identified the toxin, it believes that it can conjugate it, it can bind with those enzymes, but then all of the micronutrients. That's why fasting is so detrimental to going from phase 2 to phase 3, right? You can conjugate, but you can't bioactivate, but you actually can't conjugate and therefore eliminate or transport the toxins all the way out. So we get a lot of retox with those kinds of programs. So now you have it I'll use the word watered down, and you've got to transport or eliminate. And this is where these now complex substances, right? We've got enzymes, we've got nutrients, we've got toxins that are all kind of traveling together. They're delivered to an exit route. So we're looking at the lungs, we're looking at the skin, we're looking at perspiration, anywhere where we sweat, any gland, and especially the bowels and the kidneys. So it's really important. When you're not eliminating, you're gonna have things efficiently. You're gonna have things like constipation could be a good one. You're gonna have maybe a foul urine, real strong urine. You can have a coating on the tongue, right? The body is trying, things are starting to excrete, the body's trying to rebalance that mucosal lining, so tongue coating. You can have a dysbiosis, or the gut have a problem. That can be irritable bowel. You can have an autoimmune response because the body's immune system can't handle what's currently being released. That's a big one. When we look at toxins and toxicity and detoxification, when we talked about endotoxins, right? Autoimmunity is where the immune system attacks its own self or its own tissue. Behind that aggressive immune response, there is typically some sort of endotoxic response where the body is secreting mast cells or immune cells to help fight off that endotoxin response, right? Targeting self as foreign, as bad, autoimmune. So these are going to be the kinds of things that you see manifest. So we have to make sure that we facilitate active enzymes when you're detoxing. This is a very, very difficult process. Micronutrients that help with the conjugation. There's a glutathione pathways. Again, things like N-acetylcysteine, Quercetin, bioflavonoids, spirulina. Those are all really strong in that. Really easy to digest amino acids and a very highly bioavailable protein. And then we need fiber and lipids, so things like flaxseed, right? Flaxseed oil, things like watercress, things that are going to help actual transport that not only bind with the fat-soluble toxins, but ensure that they get eliminated. And then you're gonna need to hydrate. You wanna hydrate, right? Because that's part of this elimination process. 50% of your body weight in ounces of water every day, but make sure that you're drinking a nice clean spring water so you're not introducing those exotoxins in when we're trying to cleanse and detox. So this is a nutrient dependent process. If your body is giving you an indication, whatever you do, make sure you feed it through these 3 levels of detoxification. You cannot fast your way out of these symptoms. There can be momentary relief because you put less toxins in from the outside, but you are robbing your body of the ability to get rid of the toxins that you've already been exposed to and the endotoxins that are produced when your metabolism is out of balance. I get asked all the time, is a cleanse important? Absolutely. Every single day, the thing that sustains life is the scientific fact that our body is constantly in a process of cleansing and detoxifying. We are exposed to all sorts of things that come in from our environment that can actually wreak havoc in our health. But there's also things that go on within our body that can wreak havoc within our health. So it's critically important that you focus on nurturing the pathways of cleansing and of detoxifying your body. It's a nutrient dependent process, and a lot is accomplished in the detoxification metabolic pathways. So you want to do it strategically and actively. So people ask me all the time, Haylie, what about doing a juice cleanse? So there's some benefit. You're hopefully adding in less exotoxins. So hopefully what you're juicing is actually clean. It doesn't have molds and fungus, it doesn't have parasites or bacteria. So hopefully what you're putting in helps. But the powerful organ of detox that we primarily focus on is the liver. And the liver is amino acid dependent. And guess where amino acids come from? They come from protein. When we do juice cleanses only, we don't get enough protein or amino acids in our body to, remember, provoke that liver to actually release toxins. The other things that happens is we lose all of the fiber, which helps the body actually eliminate toxins. There are 3 major stages in detoxification. We call it bioactivation, conjugation, and transport. Bioactivation is when we provoke that liver to actually identify and bind enzymes to the toxin so that it can be released from where it's being stored. In conjugation, the next step, we take enzymes and we take nutrients and we start to dilute out that toxin so it's safe for release and safe to go into the bloodstream. Transport is when we eliminate that toxin. You have to have a very high level of consumed fiber in order to actually transport those toxins all the way out of the body. So many times in juice cleanses, we see that you get stuck in that level of conjugation. Maybe the body identifies a toxin, it starts to bind it with nutrients, but it can't transport it all the way out. So we get people that feel great while they're on the cleanse, but those toxins just recirculate, redeposit, and continue to wreak havoc. The other thing with the juice cleanse is there is a lot of effort that goes into only supporting one, maybe two of the mechanisms of detox. There's a lot of time, a lot of prep, it's very expensive cleaning your machine, but there's not really a way that you can do a holistic and support the body fully so that it can actually get rid of the toxins. The goal is not to excite the toxins in your body. The goal is to get rid of them. So the problem that we have with juice cleanses is there's not enough of the amino acids that we need in order to truly conjugate the toxin. Let me tell you what conjugation or conjugating the toxin means. It means taking it from its most toxic state and altering or transforming it into a less toxic state so the body sees it as safe to circulate it into the bloodstream. Again, it is amino acid specific, those metabolic pathways, and those amino acids come from a high enough level of protein. The other thing with conjugation that's critical is a stable blood sugar. Oftentimes with juice cleanses, not having enough protein and being deficient in the fiber part of your vegetables and your fruits, the blood sugar can become unstable. When the blood sugar becomes unstable, the body secretes a series of hormones that are storage hormones, defeating the whole purpose of conjugation of toxins, meaning allowing the toxins to be transformed so that they're safe to be released from storage. Once conjugation happens, transport, or what we call elimination, is critical. Oftentimes we get toxins that circulate in the bloodstream. They've been conjugated only to be reabsorbed if the body doesn't eliminate as fast as it detoxifies. Fiber is a critical nutrient for this transport or elimination process. So it's really hard. You can do it. I've had people that are super vested maybe in a juice cleanse, but we've got to layer that juice cleanse in with highly absorbable, digestible, complex amino acids, so a complete protein. We've got to add a ton of fiber in order to truly facilitate elimination. And even then, I'm also finding myself adding a lot of nutraceuticals in so that I can provoke the liver to do that bioactivation, identify and start to release that toxin. So look, anything's possible. But what this means is when you're done juicing your fruits and vegetables, you're going to have to add protein in, you're going to have to add fiber in, and you're probably going to have to add in a lot of extra targeted micronutrients to get the facilitation of those toxins. We want to release toxins. I love that when you eat and ingest clean foods, you have less exotoxin exposure. But what I want to do is make sure that we support passive cleansing, we support active detoxification, we identify and release the toxins, we neutralize them so they're safe, and then we eliminate them. Oftentimes people sauna when they're cleansing. The sauna is a great way to increase blood flow. So remember that second level of detoxification, conjugation, once the body is starting to circulate a safer form of that toxin, we do want to eliminate it. We want to increase blood flow. It's great for lymphatic drainage, and it can also help you sweat, which is another form of elimination. It can be great to exercise while you're cleansing. Our bodies stores sugar, or in the form of glycogen, in the liver and in the muscle. Remember, while you're doing active detoxification, you want to provoke that liver to be very active and nurtured. By exercising, you deplete that source of glycogen. The liver is the muscle's buddy in helping to replenish or facilitate the exchange of glycogen metabolism. So as you exercise, you actually are encouraging the liver to be more functional and more active in detoxification. So, do you have to starve yourself in order to do a cleanse? It's very difficult to cleanse and detox while you're starving yourself. So the answer is absolutely no. You need to feed, heal, and nourish your body while you're cleansing. Detoxification is an extremely nutrient-dependent process. You receive those nutrients through food and through supplementation. You have to nourish a body that you are expecting to let go of toxins. Do not fast during this process. Yes, you may be adding less exotoxins in, but you are completely defeating the purpose because you have robbed the body of the nutrients that are required to release historical exotoxins that you've been exposed to and endotoxins that our body is fighting every single day. So I get a lot of people that come in with a pile of supplements and they say, look, I'm taking all of these supplements, do I really need to do a cleanse? Most supplements in the United States, I would say less than 1% of individuals that manufacture supplements are doing independent endotoxin testing. It is critical that what you're taking to help nourish and support your body from a supplement perspective isn't actually creating exposure to more toxins. So you need to be very careful where you get your nutrients in general, but especially if you feel like you're compromised in the toxicity area. So as we age, we become less efficient in naturally cleansing and detoxing. I think there's a combination of reasons why. One, oftentimes our body can begin to lose vitality. I don't accept that. I think that we can absolutely support that so that we are not slower at alleviating toxins from our body. But I think the number one reason why our ability to detoxify decreases with age is the quantity of toxins that our body has stored over the years. Every time we're exposed to a toxin that the body can't take through the process of bioactivation, identifying it as something that needs to be released, through conjugation, binding so that it's something that's safe to be excreted, and eliminating. Every time that happens, our body will deposit that toxin in either a gland like the thyroid gland, in our brain tissue, and our adipocytes. Our body starts to become more and more burdened. And the dirtier our toxic load level is, the less efficient we are at detoxifying what we're exposed to next. So the liver is designed to do a great job, but a dirty liver really struggles doing any kind of a job in detoxification and elimination. So over time of exposure, we have very young individuals that have a very high toxic load and their metabolism becomes out of balance and no longer in homeostasis. But as we age, our load, our exposure, our risk of exposure, and also as we go through different hormone transitions, like menopause is a big one, our body starts to change or alter how we secrete and metabolize hormones. And if that's not happening efficiently, if we're not efficiently detoxifying unmetabolized estrogens, progesterones, and testosterones, they become what we call endotoxins, and they promote inflammation, promote disease. So we can see this as we age because statistically we have more exposure, but it doesn't have to be the case as we age. So I want you to think about foods, I want you to think about being able to metabolize foods, and I want you to let go of the fear that complex carbohydrates are terrible or the devil. Complex carbohydrates contain tons of nutrients. They have tons of fibers, lots of B vitamins, minerals, amino acids, there's protein. The difficult thing that we find is that as the body loses its efficiency in detoxification, it becomes more insulin resistant. It becomes more sensitive to things that convert naturally into sugar more readily. So we find bodies that have a very high toxic load can become sensitive to even complex carbohydrates. But you don't want to eliminate complex carbohydrates because they are the miracle workers for neurotransmitters in the brain, for things that help with adrenal restoration, adrenal fatigue, adrenal exhaustion. The ability to metabolize complex carbohydrates can change the trajectory of your health in such a positive way. So don't be afraid of complex carbohydrates. Just make sure that you're nurturing your body through detoxification so that you can metabolize the complex carbohydrates and realize the health benefits that they have when you can break them down efficiently, when you can convert them into micronutrients and you can absorb them, and then you can help secrete hormones, bind to the receptor sites, and have a very, very strong vitality in your life. The metabolism of complex carbohydrates are probably the key nutrient that helps with the feeling of excitement, vitality, that abundance feeling, that is when you can metabolize your complex carbs. So oftentimes people ask me about a plateau, why the body gets stuck, why the scale's stuck. I always say, well, defining why the scale's stuck and what to eat about it can be critical. A plateau is a homeostasis that the body's come to where it creates a stability, right? Not only in the scale, but how the body's metabolizing hormones, fats, complex carbohydrates. When you hit a plateau, we've got to identify the things that have you stuck. Typically, it's 4 things. It's either your gut, your digestion is off, you are having inflammation in the body that is too high and the body cannot regulate it and process it out, so it lets you be stuck. It is hormones in general, so you're having what we call an endotoxin experience. Your body's not metabolizing hormones all the way down the chain. Or it can be what we call exotoxins, environmental toxins that the body cannot process. They're fat-soluble toxins, so the body halts weight loss at that point. So oftentimes people over the years, I talk to clients, will have a set point or a plateau that they reach time and time again. Maybe they lose 20 pounds, they gain 20 pounds, but they always get stuck in this one weight range. It is usually the level of toxins that the body can tolerate release of, and then it stops, right? So what happens is as the body burns fat, it releases triglycerides into the bloodstream with fat-soluble toxins. If conjugation doesn't happen, if we don't bind that with enough enzymes and nutrients, then we can't facilitate elimination and the body causes it to restore. So the scale gets stuck. So I get asked a lot of times, what about bad fats? So there's really no bad fats. It's just when the level of a particular type of fat becomes high, we consider that a toxin in the body. We consider that a substance that causes harm and not health. So for example, the cholesterol molecule causes tons of health when it's metabolized efficiently. It helps us regulate our vitamin D, it helps us regulate our estrogens, our progesterones, our testosterones, our blood sugars, our anti-inflammatory hormones. Cholesterol is this gold mine. When it starts to pool and it's not metabolized in the body, it starts to become a toxin to our body. Just like LDL, right? Low density lipoproteins, just like an elevated triglyceride, that can be considered a toxin in the body if the body is not metabolizing it efficiently. We have to have this homeostasis of lipids in our body. Remember, our lipids create all of our hormones, all of our thoughts, all of our brain chemistry. All of our heart health is dependent on a homeostasis of inflammatory hormones and fats. So no fat is bad. It just becomes a toxin when the level becomes too high, and it becomes too high because the body can no longer metabolize it at the rate in which it's either being consumed or produced naturally in the body. So what happens when an individual has developed fatty liver disease or lipomas? We can nurture the body out of that metabolic trajectory. So the body doesn't do anything by mistake. It will alter metabolic pathways in order to sustain life. And oftentimes when the toxic level becomes too high, the body will use the surrounding area, the peritoneum of the liver, as a dumping ground. So the first thing that we have to do is clean the body as a whole. We need to nourish and nurture the pathways of natural elimination. We need to make sure the bowels are moving, that we're staying well hydrated, that we're sweating efficiently. We then need to nurture the organs of detoxification, feeding the liver, feeding the kidneys, nurturing the lungs. We need to help the structure of the body be as whole as it can so that it can do this very difficult job. Then we need to start active detoxification, where we nurture the liver, we provoke the liver, we nourish the liver by targeted micronutrients, things that we know help the liver have an easier time facilitating the release of toxins. And then we need to help heal the body so that it can lay down new, healthy tissue. We've got to fix the why the body's doing it in the first place, and then we need to go in and repair all of the collateral damage. So keto diets. So This is a lot of strain on the body. We are forcing the body into what we call an accessory or a crisis metabolic pathway in order to release fat. If you're not coupling this with active detoxification, so you're not supporting the pathways of bioactivation, of conjugation, of transport, so of identifying the fat-soluble toxins, of binding those fat-soluble toxins, making them safer to circulate through the bloodstream to be released, and helping to facilitate of release. As soon as you start to refeed the body, put the body in a refeeding process after the stress of keto, the body will quickly try to re-implant those toxins into a variety of areas. We hope it's fat, right? That's the safest place, is by having rapid weight gain. It's not what you want. It's not what any of us want. But what we don't want is for it to be implanted or put into the glands, the thyroid gland, the ovaries, the pituitary, the testes, the areas of the body that are most negatively impacted by toxins in the bloodstream. So it forces the body to rapidly relieve itself of fat. It dumps triglycerides into the bloodstream. However, it doesn't facilitate the binding of any of those toxins, and it really sets you up for recirculating those toxins, elevating the stress hormones, and depositing those toxins in places that we just don't want.